Here's the mistakes I've made and how I was able to correct them when using a Whetstone sharpener. First mistake I was making is not enough pressure. Because if you're not pushing down hard enough, it's going to take a lot longer for your knife to actually remove that metal, especially if it's a harder steel like D2. Here's what I've been doing to find out the right amount. Now, if the knife edge is big enough to where you can roughly fit 3 of your fingers, you're going to kind of gauge it off of how much pressure you're pushing to be able to turn the tips of your fingers a little bit white, like right underneath your fingernail. Typically, I do most of the pressure with my middle finger, so that way it distributes evenly. You know, you're not pushing down on the tip or the back side as much. But what I'll do is use all 3 fingers to actually push down pressure on while I'm sharpening on my first stone, which let's say it's 1,000 grit right here. This will remove the metal a lot faster, so that way you'll start developing that burr along the edge a lot quicker. And then if it's not comfortable using all 3, just go with 2 fingers. But it'll kind of give you an idea, at least get 2 of them to where they're pushing down just enough where you can see a color difference in your fingernails. At least that's what works for me. Second, I wasn't using a Sharpie any. And then when I started using a Sharpie, I wasn't using it enough. Get you a wide tip Sharpie and just mark down that whole edge of that knife and then black out the whole thing. I test it by just doing a pass or 2. Just to see if I'm holding it correctly, which it did pretty good, but there's a little bit right here on the edge that I need to touch up. Yeah. So once I get that, and the edge is shiny again, now I have an idea of where my angle is, and I can actually start sharpening. And then if you start to go down this and you already feel like you moved or you tweaked it a little bit, you can always just wipe this off and reapply your Sharpie. No sense in just trying to guess if you're doing it correct still. Just clean off your edge so you don't mess up your Sharpie. I've done that a few times. And lastly, not knowing what the burr even feels like. Because I'd psych myself out and go, do I have a burr or am I just making things up in my head? So the easiest way to find out what an actual burr feels like is starting with the lower grit stone, even going 200 or 400 grit. And then after you start sharpening that one side a little bit, rub your finger across that, and that burr will be more defined than starting with the 1000 grit. Okay, so now let me show you a close-up exactly how I sharpen a knife. You can follow along, rewatch the tips, however you want, but let's make this knife sharp. Step 1, clean off your knife if it's wet. Take your Sharpie out, black out that whole edge. Don't worry about getting it on your knife right there. A little bit of fingernail polish remover will easily clean this up. Next, we're gonna place our knife on the stone. We're just gonna do like a few stropping passes. Flip our knife over. So we got some Sharpie back here. It removed it pretty good all along here and then missed the tip. So we just didn't spend enough time back here or up here. And there we go. So now we got the whole edge cleaned off. Now we have an idea of exactly where to hold it. All right, now we're ready to sharpen. So I'm pushing pressure as the knife blade is leaving me. And then when I slide back like this, the pressure loosens. So I'm not gonna push very much as the knife blade is coming towards me, just to help the knife edge from not digging into the stone. The reason why I do it this way is just because it feels like I have a little bit more control over keeping that angle consistent. Now I know there's other methods and they could possibly be better, but I enjoy sharpening a knife like this and I feel like it looks pretty cool. Also, a lot of the YouTube creators that I watch, they do it this way too. Okay, now we got a good burr all the way across the whole edge. Now we're able to come to this side. Do the same thing and draw our mark all the way across. Just like that. Start with the back. Instead of the tip, we're gonna start with the butt. Place it on there and do the same thing, a few stropping passes. Maybe I'll just focus back here a little bit more, but other than that, the whole rest of the knife looks pretty good. Same motion applies except for in reverse. Now we're gonna put pressure as we pull towards us, loosen the pressure as we push away. Because the knife edge is facing that way, we don't want it to dig into the stone. We wanna prevent that as much as possible. So I like to just make a few passes, just like I'm stropping the knife, just to help knock that burr off before I move up on grits. It's not necessary, but I just like to do it. Technically, we could stop at the 1000 because 1000 is a good grit. That will get your knife sharp. But we're just going to go up one more to a 3000 grit. These are splash and go stones. So I'm just going to get this wet. Then I'll give it a second, make sure it's not absorbing too much, and then I'll start sharpening. Same thing, now we'll sharpen the whole edge. So I have a decent idea of where I was sharpening at. We'll just do a few passes like if we're actually sharpening the knife. Check it out. And that actually did really good. So we're good to sharpen this side. Now, if you do go up in grits, the higher the grit, it's going to be a lot harder to feel if you got a burr going on or not. So another way to actually help check is looking at the reflection of the knife. 3000 grit does give you a pretty nice edge, so you can actually look at the whole edge of your knife. And if there's a spot that looks a little bit dull, it could either be dirty or you just haven't been touching it up enough on your whetstone to actually get that polish going. We'll look at it in the light, which it looks pretty good. But we'll take a little bit more time just to make sure we got the whole knife. The whole edge of the knife looks nice. I do feel a slight burr, so we're ready to flip it over, which we'll take our Sharpie again. Get that whole edge. Checking our edge, which that did pretty good. I missed a little bit back here again. We got the whole Sharpie off. Our angle was doing pretty good. Now we'll finish it out. Okay, so that should be pretty good. Now let's clean this off with a little bit of fingernail polish. Grab the knife. Okay, so let's use some leather to hone the edge up a little bit nicer. Which it does really good on. So, doesn't seem like there was any nicks in it. Next test is always the hair test. Which, it does get hair off. So, those are the two tests. And then if you got one of these, you can always test and see what the numbers are. But typically, if you're able to shave hair, you're most likely under 100, which, 60 is really good. 35 to 50 is basically a razor blade sharp for shaving with. 50 to 100 is a utility razor. So, having it that sharp is really sharp for a pocket knife. I'm going to be doing a giveaway on this sharpener. I know it's electric and we're doing whetstone, but electric combination with whetstone sharpeners, perfect. All I'm trying to do is get to 4,000 watch hours, then we're going to do a giveaway on this. So if you like the video, hopefully you'll subscribe and keep watching more. Thanks for all your help.